Vladimir Putin's troops attacked positions defended by Ukraine's 10th Separate Mountain Assault Brigade, using 40 motorbikes and several armored vehicles. Ukrainian forces brutally crushed a Russian assault in the Donetsk region, inflicting massive casualties on Vladimir Putin's army. And Russian forces have steadily been gaining ground in Ukraine's eastern regions, capturing 1,609 square miles of territory over the past year. However, the gains have come at a horrific cost in human lives as unscrupulous Russian commanders hurl their soldiers into kamikaze meat assaults. In one ferocious battle on the Siversk front, Ukraine's army repelled a massive Russian attack. Putin's troops attacked positions defended by Ukraine's 10th Separate Mountain Assault Brigade, using 40 motorbikes and several armored vehicles. The brigade wiped out 39 motorcycles, as well as 6 armored vehicles and 16 enemy drones. At the same time, 52 Russians were killed, while another 12 were injured and 1 was taken prisoner. During another operation in the Donetsk region, a Russian T-80 tank was destroyed by thermite munition dropped by a drone. Video footage from the drone shows the tank standing still in a muddy field. As the UAV hovers above it, the incendiary device hits the tank, which bursts into flames, sending thick black smoke spiraling upwards. Ukraine has destroyed over 700 of the T-80s, which have earned the nickname Steel Coffins. The tank has underperformed, with key drawbacks including a gas turbine engine with high fuel consumption, excessive maintenance requirements, and poor survivability against modern weapons. In a further blow to Putin's army, Ukrainian forces in Kursk captured 27 Russian soldiers. After a fierce battle, Putin's army has been trying to expel Kiev's forces from its western province, ever since Ukraine seized parts of the territory in a lightning raid at the beginning of August last year. Despite amassing some 60,000 troops that include around 12,000 North Koreans, Russia has been repeatedly frustrated in its counteroffensive due to dogged Ukrainian resistance. It comes as Ukraine's army claimed to have killed or injured 1,600 Russians, bringing the overall casualty total to 822,030. On 23 January from the Pokrovsk direction, proximity to Pokrovsk allowed Ukrainian commanders to marshal forces undetected, preparing a counteroffensive. Here, Ukrainian forces launch a daring counterattack to retake Kotlin, exploiting the exhausted and disorganized Russian troops in a methodical assault. With Russian forces so depleted that even the wounded were forced to fight, these tactics chip away at Russian forces' combat capabilities while forcing more Russians to hurl themselves into the meat grinder. Russians recently taking tactically valuable positions in Kotlin, Ukrainian forces initiated a series of counterattacks to retake the settlement from Russian forces with overwhelming firepower. The main advantage of Kotlin is that it is located on both sides of the railway line and a dense tree belt runs through it. The industrial plant to the north provides strong structures, large buildings, and underground facilities. Controlling this settlement is a crucial advantage for both Russians and Ukrainians in the larger battle for Pokrovsk. To retake it, Ukrainians planned a complex assault operation into the village through the combined efforts of separate and assault groups. On the other hand, as you remember from a previous report, Russian forces were already so short on available manpower for their assaults that they had to send their wounded into battle on crutches. Ukrainians planned to exploit this, as it showed that Russian soldiers and men on the front line were in bad shape and would not be at all prepared to provide adequate resistance against a well-organized Ukrainian mechanized counterattack. The main advantage of the Ukrainian forces was their launching point in the city of Pokrovsk, whose large size allowed them to accumulate enough forces to launch a counterattack in relative safety against Russian detection. Furthermore, the proximity of Pokrovsk to Kotlin meant that Ukrainians could quickly launch their counterattack before the Russians could send reinforcements or prepare their defense. With no space to hide any armor, the Russian contingent in Kotlin consisted only of infantry, making them vulnerable to direct fire from Ukrainian armored vehicles. Lastly, the fact that Russians had rushed into the Kotlin industrial district meant that their flanks had been left dangerously exposed. With continued Ukrainian control over Udak, the coal mine, the fields to the north, and Pokrov itself, the Russian contingent in Kotlin had to take up an all-round defense, preparing to repel assaults from all directions, while Ukrainians could observe Russian defenses from all sides. Ukrainians took advantage of this weakness by concentrating their push on the southern portion of Kotlin in a calculated assault from Pokrovsk, breaking through the Russian weak point. The attack started with a team of fighters conducting reconnaissance, scouting out Russian anti-tank mines and firing positions. After Ukrainian snipers cleared the road of mines, Ukrainians conducted a rapid tank raid targeting Russian positions and destroying them with direct fire from the main gun. Subsequently, Ukrainian armored vehicles deployed an assault group to storm the suppressed Russian positions. While Russians initially tried to resist the Ukrainian assault, they were quickly overwhelmed by grenades, whereby the Ukrainian assault group cleared the building with small arms fire. Simultaneously, a second Ukrainian assault group was deployed to strike and clear Russian trenches just outside the village, securing the flank of the first group. Once the operation was complete, additional Ukrainian reinforcements arrived to hold the newly captured village, while the assault groups were evacuated. Overall, the tremendous losses suffered by the Russians in their previous assaults, coupled with a large number of incapacitated soldiers, prevented them from providing adequate resistance to the Ukrainian counterattack. Ukrainians retook Kotlin from the Russians. With this, Russian forces that had rushed into the northern industrial zone found themselves in operational encirclement, entirely cut off from reinforcements. Continued operations like this will undermine Russian offensive momentum and put an even greater strain on their already limited reserves. Russians either become encircled and destroyed, or are forced to commit an even greater number of soldiers to retake settlements they lose to Ukrainian counterattacks.